What the
What the
fuck?
fuck?
What the
The
fuck?
fuck?
What the
What the
fuck?
fuck?
What the fuck did I just watch? You are listening to What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at WTF Did I Just Watch? Thanks for joining us, and here's our latest episode.
Welcome to What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? And it's a new year, so we started with Randy when we started this wonderful podcast, and we figured, hey, new year, let's start it with Randy again. So welcome, Randy. And as always, we have Jenny. So on this wonderful venture, we are going to discuss the 1994 film by Oliver Stone, Natural Born Killers. Yeah.
Yes.
So, we excited?
Yep.
I'm excited.
I love this movie, so yes.
I should say, fun fact. So the reason why we did this one is because, we lured Randy in to be our guest for this episode, and he's a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. And I'm not an anti-fan. I just don't think he's all that great. But I figured if I can get him on here to talk about a movie which I enjoy that is Quentin Tarantino related.
Yeah.
There should be a fun conversation.
Adjacent.
And
Adjacent.
there's a good chance that you might hear Randy and I go at each other a little bit about stuff, but that should make it more fun for our guests.
Yeah.
I forgot to wear my ref shirt, so yeah. We'll pretend this blue means I'm wearing a ref shirt. So
Let's get it on.
I'll be refereeing this match.
I got a folding chair at the ready. No, I'm just kidding.
So grudge match, go.
No, honestly, so when this film first came out and I first watched it, I hated it. And it's mostly because it just was everything that I hated about the media. And it wasn't until I could take a step back and go, oh, this is talking about everything that I hated about the media. It's not trying to be part of it. It's trying to say this shit sucks. And then I liked it better. But the other reason why I hated it, and John Paul and I kind of talked about this, is Juliette Lewis's voice in this is so fucking annoying to me, or it used to be. It's actually not so bad now, but when I first watched it, it was like nails on the chalkboard or Freddy Krueger walking down the alley, putting his claws down the brick. It was just that annoying. And it made like, I would have like a PTSD response anytime I saw Juliette Lewis in a movie after that, because I would just be like, and
you fucking bitch.
It was just, I don't know if it was like the weird sort of Southern accent she was trying to put on it, or if like me, she might have a lower voice, so she was just trying to raise it to be heard more. I don't know, but it hurt to listen to her.
Yeah, I don't know what accent she's trying to do in this. It's like trash Southern, I mean, it's not any sort of Southern accent I'm familiar with, and I have a lot of family from the South. But you're right, her voice is like shrill in this, so I will give you that.
So. Where is she from originally? Did any of you guys know?
I don't know.
Feel free to Google.
I'm Googling it right. Oh my gosh. She was born in Los Angeles.
So maybe it's the Valley Girl Southern accent she was working on.
I don't know what she was working on. Yeah, because I agree. That was her shtick in her early career. Even, I would say, even Christmas Vacation, where she's playing somebody from the Midwest.
Yeah. Like I said, in retrospect, I wonder if just like her natural voice was just something she thought wasn't carrying her well, because I literally don't speak in my natural voice because it doesn't carry. And I got tired of having to repeat myself over and over again. So my actual voice is actually a little lower than this, shockingly.
I mean, because she does
How
this.
Low? Like, is it Elizabeth Theranos low?
Because she does the same voice in From Dusk Till Dawn, Cape Fear. I mean, it's almost like a weird, like childlike voice in a weird way. I don't know. I agree. The voice was terrible. I also was not a fan of her acting.
Well, no. It's not. I was just about to say, let's not take anything away from her acting.
Yeah, I mean, she is a good actress.
Yeah.
But you can't appreciate it when you hear the voice.
Yeah, the voice is just an odd choice. And you're right. She does several movies. She's made odd choices with an accent. So, but I like her a lot. She's got a great band, Juliet and the Licks. I highly recommend checking them out. If you guys never heard of them, they're a punk band.
Punk
Amazing.
rock band, aren't they?
They're punk. I would say they're punk.
Yeah. No,
But-
I actually love her now. It's so strange. Like I could not stand seeing her face probably for like the rest of the 90s. And then when I was able to get through the voice thing, I don't know if it's maybe because my aged ears don't hit the high pitch so much anymore now. It's much better. But I think it's funny too, because I thought she was much younger than me. She's actually 2 years older than I am.
Oh,
I was like, wow, okay. And but I actually do think she's a really, really good actress and actually very underrated. And I think part of the reason she is underrated is that voice. Like I think the reason people are so wowed by her now in Yellow Jackets is because that voice has kind of gone away.
yeah. She's amazing in Yellow Jackets. Highly recommend that too.
Yeah.
Look, we should probably give a rundown, don't you guys think? Just as to what the plot is, just in case anybody's tuning in that hadn't seen it for some reason.
And spoiler alert, in case you haven't seen this movie.
Right. Spoiler alert. So we pick up this story is about Mickey and Mallory, two star-crossed lovers who go on a serial killer binge spree across America after Mickey meets Mallory as a meat delivery driver and takes her out of her terrible home and kills the terrible family. They go across this country in this murder spree, very surreal road trip kind of elements. And then they're captured. And the movie is mainly about how we take people of ill rebuke and that do terrible things and hold them
Mass
up.
murderers, serial killers.
Exactly. And hold them up in this pedestal and make them into celebrities. And the media is mainly responsible for this. And our cultural zeitgeist, the media takes these people and gives them more airtime than they should ever get. And so the whole movie is basically a warning about what would happen if we continued down that path. This came out in what, 96, John Paul?
94.
94. Okay. So, and here we are now, and that's exactly what happened. This movie came out as like a warning and a satire about how things were getting crazy. And we lived through in the 90s, especially. You think about it, let's start with Lorena Bobbitt, then you go into the Menendez brothers, you got OJ Simpson, Jeffrey Dahmer's in there, right? I mean, we did exactly what this movie was portraying that we were going to do. So that's what the movie is about. It's about how we take terrible people and hold them up as celebrities at some point. And
even more on a lower level, like reality TV, which got really popular around this time.
Oh my God,
is also kind of a subset of that. I mean, it generally isn't like mass murders and stuff, but the more horrible or awful or stupid or whatever the reality TV stars act or behave, I mean, I guess in a way, maybe you should blame pro wrestling a little. Though that is like acting, but and not exactly reality TV. But
and on the craziness now, we have what? The internet on our phone.
Yeah.
And people becoming famous that shouldn't be famous.
TikTok.
Yeah, all of that nonsense.
I watched a video on TikTok. This is just a side note to show you how stupid. It had 3.5 million views right before we started recording this. So I clicked on it. It was two ladies holding wine glasses. And the entire video was them dancing to this song where the lyrics were like, "We're sexy." And they were just shaking their ass in yoga pants with drinking wine and dancing around. That was the video. There was nothing else about it. And I was like, I don't understand what this is. I guess I'm too old.
They're feeling their moment, I guess.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to dance around. That's fine. But why are there so many people viewing it? I don't understand.
Maybe they were really sexy in the yoga.
They were sexy. They were very sexy. But I just don't get why are they famous now for that? I mean, they're in the top 5 videos for this week or whatever. I've been at strip clubs and none of those girls were famous yet.
Well, if you put them on TikTok, they would be.
Yeah. I'll say, but then you have, all of those TikTok challenges where it was beat up on your teacher or something.
Well, there's
like 6 months ago.
Psychotic
and stuff like that.
TikTok challenges. And then
I was gonna say, was the tripod one of them? And And there's some other stupid, dangerous ones where it's like, or hold the bottle rocket and fire it off from your hand. And
Right.
well, and then, you also got the whole other, like, let's just put it out there, especially now, like there's no fact checking really happening anymore, even on the media. Even when you read the news now online, you see so many typos and just misused words. And it's almost painful. Like there's just nothing. And then you think about things like people drinking horse tranquilizer to try to stop COVID, like because
Right.
somebody said it somewhere. You're like, and nowhere in your brain did you think that, or sorry, horse
Yeah.
to warm or not tranquilizers. That would be a whole other different effect. But you know what I mean? It's just,
I
Yeah.
mean,
So it's almost
I
like
drink
we
it
took
by
this
the
Oliver
gallon.
Stone warning and went, fuck it.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
See where it goes without paying attention to that.
and not that this movie didn't have controversy, which it did.
Tons.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you had the kids in Columbine who even
NBK was their code.
NBK
Natural
was
Born
their
Killers.
thing. They mimicked this movie and got the wrong message watching this movie.
Well, but yeah, again, I was a senior in high school in '99 when, I graduated that year, and that happens. We all watched the same movies, and nobody else went and built pipe bombs. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I hate that gets brought up. Like, oh, they love that movie. Yeah, they listen to this music. Yeah, that's so what? You know what I mean? Like,
And
they were
I agree with you,
they were
but that's the
psychotic
thing.
pieces of shit. So
And
yeah.
but that's what this movie did. That people were
Yeah.
trying to blame this movie on
Well, yeah.
so many things.
I think that was the controversy too, was the violence. I
Yeah.
remember, Jenny, when this came out, I didn't get to watch all of it. My parents rented it and we started watching it, and my dad turned it off when the knife goes through the plate glass window at the diner.
It's like
And
5 minutes into the movie.
he made me go to bed. Yeah, he was like, well, it's
Which
bedtime.
that's like one of the scenes I hate most is that knife going through it, because I'm like,
Yeah.
if it hit the glass, it wouldn't make it to go. It's not a bullet, it's a thrown knife.
I
Sorry.
gotta say too, I think that a lot of the violence that you see in it is from their perspective, so it's cartoonish and
Yes.
surreal and visceral and like nonsensical, because that's how they were perceiving it, right?
Right.
So I don't really think he threw the knife through the window in this real scenario, but in his head, that's how he did it, right? That's the way I always.
I got that for most of it. For that scene, it didn't work for me though, because it's
No, I got you. Yeah.
But like, where they, the way the bullets were shot and they'd slow down, like, yeah, all that I understood. But like I said,
Right.
the knife going through the window, I was still like,
And in that scene, how about Juliette Lewis beating the living shit out of that dude?
So actually before I jump to that, I want to mention that, like, back to where the controversy and stuff, there actually was a lawsuit that a woman named Patsy Byers put forth, and she actually had like the support of John Grisham, and a couple people were tripping balls, watched this movie, and then went out and shot a store clerk, which was Patsy Byers, and she ended up being permanently disabled from it at the time. So they went and sued Oliver Stone because they, cited that this movie was the cause of it. And back to the point too, like, we all grew up on movies and cartoons and everything where violence was there. And there was like the censorship you have now did not exist. Let's just be honest. The shit Bugs Bunny pulled, that was dangerous shit, and none of them did stupid things. And so this is what always bothers me when they blame movies and or video games and or, whatever. You read a violent book, I got nothing. An asshole is an asshole. They're going to find a trigger wherever they want. You know what I mean? So, you could sit there and have them watch Bambi while there's a hunter in Bambi. You know what I mean? Like, so if somebody's looking for an excuse, they're going to find it. And basically these are people looking for excuse. So I also am not an advocate of, it's the media that's doing it. Or actually, I don't want to say it's not the media that's doing it. It's the movies and stuff that's doing it. Now, media, like with people who are sensationalizing stuff, which was the point of this movie, going back to it, the sensationalization of it, I think, adds to it for sure. But I don't think the medium itself is the issue.
Robert Downey Jr.'s character in this is the embodiment of that, gore for ratings scenario that happens, so I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So, but back to your excellent point about Juliette Lewis being a badass in that scene in the cafe where she kicks out the guy. So I was reading trivia on it, and one of the trivia things was that Oliver Stone wanted Juliette Lewis to bulk up for this part, which actually I admire that about Oliver Stone, because I personally get sick of seeing really tiny, skinny women that are supposed to be badasses, because it adds that myth. so that
Right.
you have issues where you're watching like movies like Encanto, and like the people who drew the character of Luisa had to like fight to make a strong character be strong, because you don't want women to look strong. So I appreciate that back in 94 or 93, whenever that was being shot, Oliver Stone was like, yeah, let's get you more of a badass and bulk you up. Now, I also, though, appreciate Juliette Lewis saying, no, I don't want to do that, because I want her to look like a pushover. I want her to come out of nowhere, is basically what she was going for. She
Right.
wanted this character to look weak and look like something to be preyed upon, so that when she came out and kicked their ass, it was like, damn. But
Frightening.
even
Yeah.
further to that, though, Oliver Stone was like, okay, fine, we won't make you bulk up, but you need to take some kickboxing lessons so your fight scenes look real. And you could see that in
Oh,
that
yeah.
jukebox fight scene. It's really clear she knew how to throw a punch. She knew how to throw a kick. She knew how to fight, you know, at least for this scene.
Yeah.
And I loved that. Like, that actually is one of my favorite scenes. Is her kicking that ass.
She's like, hits him and she says something like, come on, baby, or something like that. And then just
I have to tune out her voice
shit.
still, but
Yeah.
and her
Right.
face when he like starts coming up to dance with her, well, I won't just say it's just women. Every person who's been happily dancing in their own fields to music and had somebody come up that decided it was an invitation for them to come try to hit on him or get up next to him or touch them, has had that look on their face where that sudden, where it just melts, where you're like, here I was having a good time.
You're not allowed to do that?
Have a good time? Or come up on somebody who are in their moment
come up
dancing.
on somebody, and then I thought when you're dancing, you're inviting people to dance on you. Is that not the case?
Don't let me call up Juliette Lewis and ever kick your ass.
I'd take an ass. If I got to meet her, I'd take an ass whooping just to get to meet her.
So
You can just not be a dick, maybe, and meet her and not have to
I
get an
wouldn't
ass
be.
whooping.
You know me. You know me for a long time. I wouldn't be. I'd be in awe. She's amazing. But yeah, let's talk about that scene. The opening scene. Let's break it down for a second. There's so much Quentin Tarantino dialogue that they kept in this scene, from the key lime pie situation to the banter between her and the hillbilly guy. I mean, you can tell right off the bat that he wrote it. You know what I mean? It's
Really?
so. I think so. Don't you guys think so?
Well,
I mean,
no, just because basically the whole screenplay that Quentin Tarantino wrote was a completely different story, and he actually walked out of the theater after this scene because he hated it so much.
I could tell the dialogue was still there. I mean,
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. So actually, let's clarify this point. So Quentin Tarantino wrote the original screenplay.
He wrote it.
Oliver Stone and other writers rewrote it completely, and it is supposed to be a completely different movie than Quentin Tarantino's original screenplay.
I agree, but
you can actually find his original screenplay. He did publish it, so I haven't read it. Somebody could read it and tell him, but I'm not saying they threw out all his dialogue, but I am saying that there is a little bit of trivia out there that says that he
walked out,
saw this scene, the cafeteria scene, and was pissed and left. So that makes me feel like his dialogue may not be in there.
I disagree. I mean, I don't know for sure. I can't be 100%. But as somebody that's watched all of his movies a million times, the key lime pie interchange is something he would have written. It's verbatim with the kind of stuff he likes to write. But there are a lot of things in this that I totally agree with you. He would never have condoned, or the whole fucking.
Well, so I mean, like even the key lime pie, that thing, it was green, and they were actually set it up so that in the movie that whenever a really violent, horrible thing is going to happen that sets off Mickey, you see something.
Something green. That's cool. That's a neat fact.
So,
John Paul, what do you weigh in here?
All right, I'm going to weigh in now. All right. So I feel like the whole opening and beginning of this movie is meant to be a Looney Tunes. It's a Warner Brothers silly Looney Tunes thing. And the thing I really enjoy about it is the fact that Oliver Stone decided, I'm going to mess with people's perception while you're watching this, because there are 4 or 5 different camera techniques and camera styles.
Think it's like 18.
Yeah, well, I mean, during this scene, though.
Oh,
I know. During the movie, he messes around with all kinds of things, and he does it on purpose. Yeah. And he was, and I think he pioneered that kind of style, which then carried over into the 90s. And sadly enough, I think Tarantino even used some of these kind of styles of even going black and white, color, graininess, all kinds of things that is just surreal. And like I said, Looney Tunes. It's like so far-fetched. That's why when you say that your dad was like, I'm turning this off. I'm like, I thought this is more of like a farce and just how crazy it can be. That
Yeah.
it's like if it was real, like both of you said, yeah, that knife would have just broken end of it. It wouldn't have gone like crazy and the bullet stopping right before and all of that.
And they
Even
actually
the
show them
splatter.
turn into cartoons too,
Yeah,
right?
and later
So,
exactly they turn
Mhm.
into cartoons. Even just the way the blood splatter on
Yeah.
stuff is just so,
Yeah.
all over the place that it's more of a cartoon. And that I think was the way I see violence in movies. Okay, so is this a horror movie? Is this an action movie? Is this a drama? Where would you put the category of this movie?
It's a satire.
It's a
Yeah.
satire, perfectly. But I remember again working at video stores, two different video stores. This movie was placed once in the horror section, once in the drama, and once in the action. Made no sense to me
Yeah.
because this movie is its own monster.
I was gonna say, they didn't even have satire sections, did they?
No, they
No,
don't.
no, they
No.
I
don't.
don't know. I would say it's more of an action movie than anything else, though, just because it doesn't really fit in horror, because it's
Yeah.
just not.
It's not
It's
a
not.
horror.
And
But
at
in,
least it is a very action-oriented movie, even though the intent isn't a simple action movie.
Right.
And drama just seems wrong.
Yeah.
for me, I would put it under a comedy.
I could go with a dark comedy, sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is a dark comedy. Exactly. This to me is a comedy.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've seen this and I laugh. And then when I rewatched it again on Sunday, I found myself laughing even hard. And Kate was just like, my wife looks at me and is like, is this funny? I go, yeah, this is hilarious.
Yeah. She's looking at you. She's like, "You think murder is funny? You freak."
It can
Just-
be.
But I mean, the murder in this movie, I think with the exception of certain scenes,
Uh-huh.
is comical to me. But
Well,
the thing that is not comical that I wanted to get in depth with you guys was these two characters. So let me just kind of segue. Let's go into Juliette Luce's character. Okay, she's an abused person by her father, by Rodney Dangerfield, which that's what the first time I watched it, I'm like, this is a huge surprise.
It was shocking.
It's
to see
shocking.
him
It's
in that
Rodney
role. And this was his
Dangerfield.
only dramatic role.
Yeah, playing a
Yeah.
role where you're like, okay, he's not being funny. He is creepy as fuck. He is scary. His eyes, like, I mean, are popping out in certain scenes. It's just creepy as fuck. But I also, the flip coin, okay, so you get all this drama and all of this trauma of Julia Lewis's character and what made her, a killer or whatever. And then you get the flip side of Woody Harrelson's character, and you really don't get much of anything except the fact that he witnessed his father kill himself.
No, they pretty much applied physical abuse in there too.
Okay, fine. Physical abuse.
But it wasn't until
by the
way
mom.
later.
Right,
Yeah.
by the mom. And that's why I was just kind of like,
Well, I think the dad too. I think there's
well, okay. But what I'm saying is it's really strange that
they
in a
don't focus
movie
on
like
it.
this, they don't give you a balance of both of them. And I mean, I'd like your take on it, Jenny, being a woman and representation and whatnot. Because it's really weird because it's like, okay, she was abused, so she's a piece of shit, right? That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but why?
well,
And then you
I
have
know-
the man that it's like, oh, well, he was also abused, but you don't go into the depth of that.
Because he's a
Yeah.
guy, so you just expect violence.
That's bullshit. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
That's my
but
problem.
I also agree that she was sexually abused, so now she's a whacked out psycho killer.
Right. That's my problem because I'm
Right.
rewatching
Every
this now.
woman would be a whacked out psycho killer. I mean, there'd be
Exactly.
like 2 women on the earth that weren't. You know what I mean?
And that's why I was like, I rewatched it now with eyes of the world we live in now.
eyes wide
And I'm
open.
just like, it doesn't make sense now. Again, I still enjoy this movie by all means, but it's like, why wasn't there a balance? minutes, and
I
that's
think you're right. There
know,
should have been an equal opening. They should have cut that opening out maybe, and they made it equal time frame showing both people what brought them to their point. But at the end of the day, you're right. They didn't really, even with all the depth they went in Juliette Lewis, they kind of just, like Jenny said, hit a one note with it.
they just skimmed him over.
So I don't know. If you watch a lot of Dateline and To Catch a Predator, all those kind of shows, if you've seen the news coverage on O.J. Simpson, the Menendez brothers, what pushes people to become killers is situations that trauma is involved.
Right.
But some not everybody does it. Like Jenny said, or we would all be murderers, So we've all had trauma. So I think there should have been more. If you wanted to delve into the layers of what makes a serial killer, then there should have been more focus on that at the beginning. You're right. But I don't think that his overall focus for that was, this was just a segue into his bigger arc, which was that the media is out of control. So.
And I agree, but you focused a lot, because think about it. The Juliette Lewis scene when she meets him is a good 20 minutes. And that whole satire that is a sitcom of hearing even a laugh track going on while she's getting abuse.
I don't know why they did that.
Up,
I mean, why would?
Interestingly enough, Rodney Dangerfield did not understand why they were doing it either. Like, he didn't understand why they were putting this dark thing in the middle of a 1950s sitcom. And he, from what I read, it made it really difficult for him to be able to do it, which is interesting because he actually is the one who wrote all the filth lines, like all the shitty stuff he says to
which is
Valerie
crazy.
It's amazing. And he does an excellent job, but like he got acclaims for it, but he never understood the thing. I personally think it was to show the contrast, to show not even the contrast, to show that here's your 1950s idealistic thing, and under the surface, if you were in the house, with Leave It to Beaver or I Love Lucy, you would be seeing this shit going on and you wouldn't believe. And I think that's also why he chose Rodney Dangerfield. You wanted to take this funny, happy looking guy that you would never suspect of anything.
Oh, right.
And
I agree.
Because that's the reality of it. Like, the truth is, you don't know, like, you can't look at somebody's house and it's run down and they're like white trash and they don't have a job, and it's that person, that abuses his daughter and his wife and beats the shit out of his kids. It's not relegated to that. That's the myth. The reality is it's, middle-class suburbia where everything looks happy and Leave It to Beaverland. And here, what's really happening is sick shit.
And
I thought that was the point he was trying to make with that.
A little segue too. First on the Rodney Dangerfield, I read his biography. And in his biography, there's about 4 or 5 chapters chronicling his childhood sexual abuse and trauma that he suffered. So, and his parents didn't, he literally says in his book, his parents didn't love him. They shipped him off to live with an aunt. His mom always would pop in and just kind of be indifferent about him. He basically grew up with raising himself in a group of his cousins who the people just tolerated him because they weren't going to let their family live on the street, kind of thing. But so he had and he was sexually abused by a neighbor. The chapter is called 25-cent kisses, and the neighbor used to give him a quarter every time he set him on the lap and let him kiss him.
Wow.
So I mean, there's some dark shit that happened to that poor guy. So so maybe he was tapping into a little of that.
Yeah, that makes sense then.
Another interesting point, though. So the scene where you see Mallory's dad grabbing her ass and groping her, that is neither Juliette Lewis's ass nor Rodney Dangerfield's hands.
Good.
There's a lot of conjecture about why that was. Like, it could be anything from they were busy that day when the scene was shot to neither one of them felt comfortable with it. I never found anything that said exactly what it is, but I did find something that said that absolutely was neither of them. In that scene,
interesting.
Which
good.
made me feel better.
Yeah.
I didn't want Rodney Dangerfield to be doing that.
I bet
respect.
Yeah. I bet he didn't either, not under those circumstances. But but yeah, so that's the thing I wanted to point out was that
I'm glad you did. I mean, I even wonder if maybe that's why he chose to do that role.
It could very well be, he didn't do a lot of serious things, like you said. So
Interesting. So yeah.
Oh.
On that note,
Yeah.
also props to Edie McClurg, who is just no matter what she's always kind of the same character in whatever she's in, but
Yeah.
also, you know,
Ferris Bueller's one rad dude.
Nine
the prude and
times.
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, you know.
Yeah.
So
righteous dude. One righteous dude. That's what she says.
but yeah, I don't know. I thought the way she just pulled off the little like, oh shit, I'm gonna die.
And did you guys see too? Like I guess I hadn't watched it in a while, and I watched it recently again twice, and I just forgot how quickly Mickey was going to murder the son too, and she was like, no, he's all right, you know. But I forgot, like he was just like, oh, there's another one, kill it, and then you know, like
The only reason I remember, because I've always was confused why Mallory didn't just let him do it, because, and this is awful of me, but you know, I mean, the mom was murdered because she just sat by and let it happen. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, I mean, that she was murdered for that. I'm just saying that was it. Like she didn't herself abuse Mallory. She just didn't stop it. But at the same note, I mean, her little brother was sitting at the table giving her shit and laughing anytime her father said or did anything to her. And it's not like he was like significantly younger. You know, I mean, it looked like there was maybe 3 years difference between the two of them. You know what I mean? Like he was 12 and she was 16.
You heard it. You heard it here first, folks. Jenny wished they would have murdered the kid.
I didn't wish they would have. I just thought it was interesting that she drew
but the kid was her kid. You guys forget that part.
No,
that's wrong.
That was her little brother.
The scene John Paul goes,
I thought
that you thought you were in Mallory's room, and that's why we have Kevin. He fucked her, the mother.
Oh, okay.
He just thought he was with Mallory because he was drunk.
Then I misheard it.
And the little boy's like, you mean Mallory's my mom? Because, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. I was like immediately like, no, that's wrong, Joe.
No, then again, I think I misheard it then.
It's already fucked up enough, dude.
It is fucked up. I'm not saying it's
funny scene because she was so Edie McClurg's character is crying because she's like arguing, I believe, at this point with Rodney Dangerfield's character about eating beef and dying from the cholesterol.
Yeah.
And Rodney Dangerfield tells her, quit crying. It's so unattractive, or it's such a turnoff or something like that. And she says, I hadn't cried in 15 years and you still haven't touched me. And Rodney Dangerfield says, well, then what was the son's name? Kevin or whatever. How's Kevin here then? And she says, you got drunk and you thought you were in Mallory's room. That's why we have Kevin.
There we go.
And like the whole scene to me was like,
because hey, like they said, someone needed to be alive to tell the tale. He was the first.
Maybe that was it. There we go.
I mean,
I didn't think the kid was going to die. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, but it just seemed like
we heard it, Jenny. You wanted the kid to die.
Jenny was.
I just didn't see why she spared him. Like there was not anything where they showed any intimacy with the brother, like where he stood up for her, or that she was protective of him, or anything, or that he was even subject to the same abuse that her and her mother was. Like there was nothing that established why she would have been like, "We'll let him live," you know.
Well, the house was on fire, so maybe he ended up dying.
If
that makes you feel better, Jenny.
And he probably ended up in the foster system, which is just as bad.
He died. He died. Jenny's happy.
Yeah, Jenny wants to write a sequel all about Kevin.
Anyway, sorry about that. We kind of digressed on that a little too long. But yeah. Well, you know, the other thing that struck me that I thought was really kind of disturbing too. So it looked very clear to me that when Mickey got arrested for like stealing the car and running off with her, that he was in adult prison, not, you know, juvenile hall. Clearly Mallory's character was supposed to be underage, you know.
Oh yeah, I totally believe that Mickey was probably 25.
And she was like 16, maybe.
Yeah, I totally think that.
And there she is in the prison visiting him unsupervised, giving him a hand job. I'm like, I have a slight like, nope. Pedophile feel here for anybody? No guards are like inappropriate behavior, nothing.
The guards have probably wanted in on it.
That whole scene was weird, just because out of nowhere you just see you're like, what is happening?
I'm like,
yeah.
Do they let you at 16 go visit a grown-ass convict that you're not related to?
I don't. I think that you could probably lie during that time period and say you were older.
Maybe you didn't have to provide ID. I feel like
we've lived in a generation before 9/11 and after 9/11, and a lot of things changed. So
Yeah, but there's a lot of shit you couldn't get away with still.
I
that
don't,
you needed
well, I mean, I
your
don't think you
ID
could
to
jerk
get
people
in.
off in prison, but I think you could easily have lied about your age back then. But I don't know. That's a crazy scene. Again, I think again it's just to establish how fucked up their sexual relationship was, and then we go on the run with them, and we see that Mickey's got a completely idea of what his relationship with her should be, right? And Mallory's got this vision of how she wanted her household to be, basically like a perfect marriage, and a perfect marriage with murder in it,
With murder, yes.
but which leads us to, if I can move us to that next group of scenes. Speaking of them on the run, there's a disturbing scene that it's always bothered me, where she goes out after they have kidnapped that woman in the hotel room, and she tries to screw this guy that likes her car,
No,
and
she likes the Corvette that's in the garage.
that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah. But they sit her on, they do this whole sex scene, and then she kills him. I just felt like that was completely unnecessary. I always
find it interesting that you're disturbed by that, but the fact that Mickey was back in the hotel being the hostage was not disturbing.
That's the kind of stuff I'm not surprised about with serial killers, like
actually this, that whole thing in context is real interesting, because it shows right there where this, well, you're right, on the bridge and stuff, and when they run off, you clearly see that Mallory has this romanticized version, and even Mickey is very much romanticized about how they're joined and they're like fate and they're supposed to be together. But then the next thing you know, he's driving down looking for somebody else to fuck, because it's his, thing already, where he wants a hostage and stuff. And you can already see when he's looking for one and talking about getting one, where Mallory's extremely uncomfortable. So now you have a relationship again where it's being led by him, dictating what she should, be doing as well. So the fact that when they're in the hotel room, he's like, yeah, I thought we'd add her into the mix. And she's like, no. But back to your point where she, I would say she does kind of seduce the guy, the gas station attendant, because there's only one person, he's the only character I actually kind of felt sorry for. Him and the Native American, the indigenous person, are the only two people I really felt sorry for or felt any compassion for in the movie. Like, that's actually one of my problems when I first watched it, is I hated every main character. I'm like, all these people can go die in a fire.
Yeah.
But those two, cause they make it really clear that the gas station attendant isn't being creepy. Like, he's not being weird or even hitting on her at first. Like, he does mention that she looks familiar, but it's not in the hey, do I know you kind of way.
Right.
And she actually is the one that does initiate, all the activity. And when she sort of snaps out of it, because, she's in the state already where she's pissed because she knows her husband's probably fucking this hostage and not feeling sexy or love, which is why she's talking to the attendant and saying, hey, do you think I'm sexy? And then she just decides no, and then shoots him. But I also love where she shoots him. She's like, it's the worst head I ever had.
Yeah.
Now,
next time, don't be so fucking eager. I mean, it might have been a really, really, really bad head, Randy. And that's what
I was going to say, but now, do you think that scene was, remember, she was fantasizing about Mickey.
Yeah.
During that scene. So do you think she's in that trance, that whole, the perfect man, even though that perfect man was being a piece of shit, but she fantasized about this perfect man. And then the man, when the guy becomes too aggressive, which is what was happening back home, she snapped back into reality and was like, no, fuck this. This guy's going to die.
Yeah, I think it was a mix of that, where she couldn't really feel that she could lash out against her abuser, whether it was her dad or Mickey or whatever, what I mean?
Right.
We also see flashes of Rodney Dangerfield in there too.
That's true.
She's lashing out at this.
But she could lash at this guy. And so
he's just trying to work on this Corvette that's clearly commissioned. He's working overtime. It's fucking nighttime, and he's just trying to do his job. This lady wanders in and it's like, hey, seductress. She was a seductress.
And also what triggers her back also to that point is he figures out who she is.
Yeah, that's true.
That's kind of all at the same time. Like, he says, oh, you're Mallory. And then she pops through and just throws him off her and just has had, boom.
Right.
But
so I always said, if I was being seduced by a serial killer, I'm going to totally pretend like I don't know who they are.
And then you're going to die.
Probably.
If he kept his mouth shut, he might. And don't be so fucking eager, Randy. That's the other one. Two things: don't reveal that you know who it is, and try to keep calm and make sure you're giving good head.
It takes me a while anyway, so it seems like I'm being suave, but I'm just trying to figure shit out. It's like a puzzle box.
I'll send you some diagrams.
I'm always yelling lament configuration.
Yeah, but I also thought it was interesting that they focused like that whole scene. They like have little flashes of what likely ends up being a rape of the hostage and probably killed, because I'm sure he's not leaving her alive. But they don't really make a scene out of it. They focus much more on what Mallory's doing, and I don't know if they wanted to just put the shock in there of a woman killing a guy or what.
Yeah, I was just saying it seemed out of character for her, but until we just broke it down, and now it makes sense. She's trying to get back at her, at her dude, and then all of a sudden she realizes that she doesn't want to do that. So, and the guy, she's taking it out on him. But this leads us to, if you spoke with the Native American guy, to probably the most heart-wrenching scene of the whole movie for me, is like you're talking about. It's the most surreal too. Every time I watch
mushrooms, or at least
every time I watch this thing, I'm like, God, I wish I still smoked weed, because that scene would have been a whole lot better. It's just so fucking trippy, and the music is amazing. Everything, the shaman part of it is cool, where he's telling the story, and then. We could, spoiler alert, tell everybody, they get helped by this guy, and he has snakes and stuff, and Mickey has a bad dream and kills him, when he wakes up by mistake. And it's pretty jacked up.
It's interesting too. So, also, if you listen to some of the dialogue up to coming into like where they run into this.
Yeah.
I don't know that he was a shaman, but it really looked like he was.
Right. Well, yeah, I was just making an assumption, but they're lost in the desert. I guess I forgot.
Slang and slurs about indigenous people. Like he tells, like when the cops follow him, he's like, "Go and eat your fry bread." There's a lot of just not good shit that's coming out of Mickey's mouth in regards to indigenous people. They end up, I guess the car runs out of gas, breaks down, something along those lines, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of a reservation, basically, is what it appears to be. And they do end up, and the guy takes them in, and it's like awful too, because you have Mallory going, I don't think he speaks English. My name is Mallory.
Yeah.
And the whole time, the old shaman understands him. He knows exactly what's going to happen. He even, like in his monologue or dialogue, however, because he's kind of, I guess, talking to his little grandson, sort of, and he says that he knows that he's picked up snakes, and he knows it's going to bite him big. Basically, it's the whole story he's telling about a woman picking up a snake and the snake biting her, and the snake going, "Bitch, what'd you think?"
Yeah.
Which is a great analogy for all women who pick up a guy that is a piece of shit and try to protect. It is going to bite you.
Or a woman, or if you're a guy,
fair enough.
You pick up a woman.
He does end up calling them the demon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, plays what essentially his character is. And he later talks about it, that, he is the demon, and what happens to the demon. That whole scene. I remember seeing interviews and Oliver Stone saying, yes, we took mushrooms, and yes, we wrote down what we saw.
Was a cokehead as well.
Yeah. So, I believe Woody Harrelson would probably tripping on shrooms as well.
He's an advocate for weed for sure. So I don't know if he jumps over the hallucinogens as well, but I would not be surprised.
Let's also say,
at the very least, a vegetarian. I don't know if he's a vegan.
He's vegan.
Vegan.
Yeah, I know that.
We know that from Curb Your Enthusiasm, right?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, Edge of 17. There's
the cocaine explains Michael Madsen's character.
God!
Was it Michael Madsen or the other?
Tom Sizemore, I think.
Tom Sizemore. They look the same.
Jesus, I always get them confused.
They're essentially they're interchangeable.
No. Madsen was up for Mickey, and they decided not to go with Michael Madsen for Mickey because they wanted a softer looking killer, and apparently they thought Michael Madsen just looked flat out like.
Well, Well, Tom Sizemore and Michael
Tom
Madsen
Sizemore.
they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about Michael Madsen. He was.
Yeah, no, I got you.
I'm not confusing them.
Right.
Tom
Yeah.
Sizemore did play Scagnetti, but Michael Madsen had been up for Mickey. But
Fun.
sorry, digression. Right. So we're in this scene. He kills him. You see that actually I assume it might be his grandson. Maybe it's his son, who's like.
It was his grandson, because remember, his son was the one that had gotten discharged or died. I'm sorry, in some war, because they had the papers and everything, because he was in the army.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was wearing the Army PT shirt.
Exactly.
Which I had one of those for a very long time, because those are the ones they were using in 2000 still.
Well, there you go. See,
But
so yes,
yeah. But
the
the other point I want to make, the nightmare he was having was basically about his abusive childhood too, which I think the other flash you saw that before that was right before the rape.
Right. But again, that goes to like I said, you get the brush of his.
You don't
background.
get the full story. You just see.
No, and like I said, that's why it's kind of like balance.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, so the death of the shaman ends up being the lead to their being
captured.
In their
because Mallory gets bit by a rattlesnake, and
they both actually got bit.
Oh, did they both?
But I think she got bit more, and she's smaller.
Yeah.
So technically, she would.
Yeah.
And honestly, after they got bit, even one time, they would not have been able to make it all the way to that drugstore and be able to run.
Right.
But at any rate, an interesting fact: there were real rattlesnakes in that mix in that desert, and they were worried about it at first, but it was cold, so they weren't super worried about the actors getting it, because rattlesnakes aren't so quick when they're freezing. So.
Right. They're cold-blooded.
Yeah. so yeah, we can fast forward, but yes, they get captured. But
I don't want to fast forward. I want to talk about the
drugstore.
Drugstore, because it's visually one of the coolest pieces in this movie.
Also noticed a lot of green at that point.
Yeah, a lot of green, like Jenny was talking about. The drugstore emblem itself, it looks like it's its own like world, basically. That they're entering into.
It was in fact an actual drugstore that they shot it in. It was had just closed, so a lot of the shelving and everything was still there, but it was interesting.
I love his interaction with the teller at the drugstore, who's watching Robert Downey Jr.'s show, and that's showcasing Mickey and Mallory's kill spree. And he presses the buzzer that calls the cops, and Mickey's about to kill him, and he says, "Well, I thought you had to leave one person alive," and he's like points at the video cameras. It's like,
which sets up for later in the movie.
Yeah. So,
and also he points out that if I leave you alive, there's no crime that was committed.
Exactly. Yeah. And then he gets to the cops, which is like one of the coolest scenes in this movie. The standoff with the cops it's insane. The first time I watched this, I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. I mean, they got Mallory, they're beating the shit out of her outside. He's arguing with Scagnetti. By the way, Scagnetti is mentioned in Reservoir Dogs as the same
parole officer, I believe.
Parole officer. Yeah, that is in charge of Michael Madsen. And so
there you go. There's your Tarantino.
Trivia for
There's your Tarantino.
Yeah. I love that scene in Reservoir Dogs too, because they're like, "How's Scagnetti?" Well, he's a fucking asshole, which translates perfectly into this. So.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, we take a moment to talk about that character, because that character is absolutely disgusting. And I don't know if it's Tom Sizemore or if it's just how he portrayed it, but sleazy, skeezy, gross, just like everything you don't want a cop to be, everything that if you're a woman, especially, you're afraid a cop is. Because there he is with the prostitute. He kills her just to feel what it's like to kill somebody. I assume that was his first kill.
We don't know, but I suspect there's more.
Like, I'm sure he shot other people that were like criminals and convicts and stuff like that, but I think that might have been the first just random person that he just killed just for shits and giggles. There's back to the Corvette sex scene. There's a pair of Mallory's underwear there. He sniffs it.
Oh, he looks at her ass print on the.
Yeah, it was like there's like the world's most perfect ass there. I mean, it's just gross. And then even the threat he makes against her to Mickey. It's not that I'll kill her or I'll hurt her. I'm going to cut her tits off.
Right.
Threat. Which even funnier though is Mickey's response, like, "We'll buy her better ones."
Yeah.
It's not exactly what he says, but he's like, "I'll buy her new ones" or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's again terrible person. but I'll go back to the end of that scene when they're getting captured, and Mickey's getting beaten by those cops. If you
Meanwhile, they're
pull
both poisoned by, snake
right,
venom. It's just-
but I was gonna say,
Yeah.
if you pull up the Rodney King beating
it was
and
supposed
that
to be
scene
amazing.
side by side, they are so close to that, which was so creepy. Now
Well, it's
watching it,
deliberate.
yeah, no, I know it was deliberate, but it's so creepy watching it now. Like when I watched it with Kate, because Kate wasn't around for Rodney King, and she's like, because I'm like every time I'm like, and she's like, what, they're just beating him up, and I go, no, they're not just beating him up. So much so that I had to pause, get my
Do you know,
phone
was
out.
Rodney King 92 or 93? It was like right.
I want to say it was
around-
90, I think,
92.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
1992.
Okay, so it was like
Yeah.
they were filming this in 93, so it was like right fresh.
right, yeah. So
Yeah.
I paused it, got my phone, Googled it, played her the clip, and she's like, holy shit. I go, yeah, that's the same beating. And it's
Yeah.
like, holy shit. So again, not only did we get Scad and Eddie being shown as how cops can terribly be, but the fact that it was being filmed by that Asian reporter, and then they push her away
Yeah.
Mhm.
while they were filming him getting beaten, which mirrored what was happening, which again goes along with what's this movie's trying to tell people, if they're understanding what this movie's about. Not, hey, I'm gonna go kill people.
Right. Yeah. And
Message.
that whole capture scene is just
Yeah.
unbelievably well shot and crazy and archaic and just nuts. I didn't know the Rodney King beating thing, but yeah, the police are definitely, doing their their brand of justice
It's
there.
gross. It's
So,
gross.
yeah.
It's absolutely gross.
But I mean, that's like you said, that's his point, right?
Yeah, no,
So,
exactly. That was the example. So
and I like that from there we get introduced to Robert Downey Jr. finally and his
Yeah. I
crazy.
mean, you see glimpses of him when they do the little media
Yeah.
bites, but
Yeah.
so interestingly, the Australian accent, like Wayne Gale as the character's name, he was not originally Australian, but Robert Downey Jr. went to Australia, and there was a Shot King TV guy down there, his name something Dunleavy, I believe, that Robert Downey Jr. was like watching and learning from, so he can bring it to the Wayne Gale character. And as a result of the time spent down in Australia and with this guy, he pretty much assimilated an Australian accent for a while when he came back, and they liked it, so they decided to make Wayne Gale Australian because
It's fantastic. Robert Downey Jr. is a genius. He was crazy all through the 90s on coked up, but he did so much. He did so much amazing stuff, and this is one of them. There are some scenes with this guy that are like iconic to me. We'll get to them, I'm sure, the prison scene especially, but he says some shit to his girlfriend on the phone. That's like one of the
the
funniest
hot pepper up
things.
the ass. I'm like, that
Yeah.
not remotely.
so
Is that a euphemism or something?
Yeah. I've never felt more alive.
I'm going to totally say it. Robert
Yeah.
Downey Jr. and Tommy Lee Jones are my favorite things of this movie.
Both
Yeah.
phenomenal performances. for
Both
sure.
of those
Yeah.
characters. I mean, okay, we know Rodney Dangerfield did a great job for his small role, but Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Downey Jr. deserve awards in my eyes for both of those roles in this movie.
Yeah,
Because they're so fucking good acting.
they really added a lot.
Acting, like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
So I gotta jump in here. So I read a bit of trivia. Tommy Lee Jones said that his over-the-top performance was partly inspired by Moliere's play Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme, which is a satirical look at social climbing and the bizarre things people will do to achieve fame. Which makes perfect sense
Perfect
when you think
sense.
about what he was doing.
That's a nail
Perfect
on the head
sense.
right there,
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting little wow. Like, I totally respect Tommy Lee Jones as an actor. I think he is amazing. But like, this was a little bit of insight to him that I would not have picked up. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah. And to break it down for everybody, so after the capture, Wayne Gale wants to go in and talk to the two serial killers. They happen to be visiting the same day that the Scagnetti character is there as well for It wasn't. It was just. He was just there to.
No, they had invited. So
did they invite him? Because
they
I don't know
invited Scagnetti. Now remember, the first time, this is
Okay.
before they actually are going to have the interview. This is when Wayne Gale is trying to set up to get the interview.
Right.
And
yeah.
they had Scagnetti there because they have decided that they need to get rid of Mickey and Mallory because it's, they're causing havoc around the prison and it's going to incite riots. They think
Right. The warden wants him there.
And they were going to send them to a mental institution, basically where the end game was to lobotomize him. But the actual plan the warden wanted, if you hear it in the dialogue when he and the two guards and Scagnetti are walking, is they were going to have Scagnetti take them to the psych place as a ploy to just murder them.
Right.
En route, and then come up with a story like they tried to escape or whatever.
Yeah, if they didn't make it, it would be all right.
Because he was talking about a book deal and all that after.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, Wayne Gale had been there to start initiating being able to get an interview.
Right.
Which also in that dialogue, they talk about how they thought it would be weeks before they could even get it. By that time, Mickey and Mallory would have been transported and or killed.
Yeah.
Which didn't work out that way. So I'm sorry, go ahead though from there.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's the setup is so Wayne Gale gets the interview. He sits down with Mickey, to do this, and they've got a ton of guards, Mickey has shaved his head at this point. He looks super. Woody Harrelson just super intimidating in this scene. I remember as a kid just thinking, man, this guy is not the same dude from Cheers.
Good point too, because
Yeah.
At this point, prior to this, Woody Harrelson had been in movies and he'd played other things besides, I can't even, what was his name? His character's name was Woody also on Cheers.
Woody and Cheers.
Yeah. Goofy.
Where they were less goofy, but they were still very non-violent. They weren't crazy serial killer characters he played. They were maybe a cop, maybe, white men can't jump, just a little bit of a con man, that kind of thing. And then you had this, and this was the fuck happened here?
Right.
Because you did not view him in that light. And so when he was just a crazy fucking killer, mass murderer, you were like, the fuck?
And side note, Woody Harrelson's dad is in jail for murder. Did you guys know
I
that?
thought it was an attempted hit.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was a hitman. Yeah.
Right, but I didn't know I can't remember if he actually killed the judge.
I thought he killed the judge. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, wow.
But he was a hitman. He was contracted to kill a federal judge, I believe, and he either succeeded or attempted and failed. But either way, he got caught and is in jail. So
yeah.
Wow.
So that's
he might be dead by now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still alive, but if you look him up, he looks just like Woody Harrelson. It's crazy. He looks like a 50s version of Woody Harrelson.
Wow.
So I highly recommend you guys watching this. Google Woody Harrelson's dad and go down that rabbit hole for a while. It's pretty fun. Not for Woody Harrelson. I feel bad for the guy, but at the end of the day, it seems like he probably drew from some of that in this, because it's crazy. This interview is nuts, but it's juxtaposed, if I'm using that word correctly, with, Tom Sizemore,
Scagnetti,
Leo Scagnetti, in the cell with Juliette Lewis and Mallory. He's attempting to lure her into being cordial and nice and he's her friend, so that he can basically
he's trying
rape
to solicit sex from her.
Yeah.
And basically, he's in a position of power and
yeah.
Yeah.
He's kind of what Harvey Weinstein was doing behind the scenes.
probably.
Yeah. So,
and managed to do it in the creepiest way possible.
Well, I'm just saying that whole scene itself is sick. Just all the way down to where he's got his shirt open and he's pinch my nipple. Really get in there. What the fuck?
Juliette Lewis's character's response to that, so specific. Actually, she just ad-libbed that. She was like, "You just make sure specific."
Yeah, that's really awesome. I didn't know that was ad-lib. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the interesting thing, it is a very disgusting and hard scene to watch, but also the uplifting, for lack of a better word, part about it is the whole time, if you've been watching the movie, you know she's going to take him out.
Oh,
you
yeah.
want him dead. No, you
That's
want
one
him
of the
dead.
few moments that gave me glee.
This guy is not as smart as her in any stretch. And so the whole time you're watching it, it's tense because it's flipped, because that she's the cat, not the mouse, So it's fantastic. But it's really, really fucked up. So, but then you cut back to Mickey doing the interview, and he's running down. He has one of the other better lines too in this thing where do you got any regrets? And he's like, yeah, I wish I hadn't killed that Indian, like, yeah, that you're right. That's definitely a regret. But he gets the upper hand and, basically starts to break out. But during this time, a jail riot has gone on that has nothing to do with these guys, which is, I mean, it does
because they're watching, which this would never happen.
Yeah.
Like, they would not put this on for convicts to watch, but they're
Absolutely
watching
not.
this live interview.
Yeah, so they're getting all worked up and on behalf of them, right?
Yeah.
So they do have, I guess, a direct
There's a connection,
way.
but to your point, it wasn't that Mickey or Mallory staged the riot.
Exactly.
It happened organically from watching.
Right.
Well, they also talk about how the prison was overcrowded in the first place.
Yes. Yep.
And they make a point of that, and I thought that was interesting too, because it's like, okay, something's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And
stuff is starting. The point about the silence and things are breaking out.
Yeah, stuff is starting to boil over, and
Right.
then watching this is just where it just goes.
Here's my opinion too. I could be wrong, but this is the way I've always felt. When you're watching the final act of this, where they're weaving through like Dante's Inferno to get out, right? Isn't it to me? It's like Oliver Stone's saying in this part that this is what we're about to come into. You're about to come into chaos if we keep this shit up. Now, I could be wrong. I might just be reading into it, but that's what I felt. I felt like he was saying this is all the leading up to chaos. Everything breaks down if we don't roll this back and have clear lines on what's what. But I love this.
I don't know that's what he was saying, but I can see.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
point you can pull from it for sure.
Cool. I've always thought that was kind of like his, and I could be wrong. Like, we wouldn't know unless he was sitting here with us. Really, what he might have just thought it looked cool. Who knows? Right? But I like that idea is that he's pointing it back at us and going, "This is what you want. You guys want this, and this is not going to end well for anybody." And we watch Wayne Gale go from reporting on serial killers to becoming a killer to becoming like a full-fledged psychopath.
Well, quick clarification, just because I'm an asshole, but
no, go ahead.
Mass murderers, they actually weren't serial killers because they didn't. So
they didn't have you're right.
There. And I also want to jump back to the interview where he's doing live.
Yeah,
was totally, well, not totally, but partially was based on Geraldo Rivera's interviews of Manson, and then I forgot the other media person's interview of Manuel Noriega was another one. But I never saw the interview of Manuel Noriega. I did see parts of the interview with Manson. I just didn't watch all of it because I was not super interested in Manson's side of the story. But or Geraldo Rivera, who was a very sensational, or may still be a very sensational media icon. But you could see it, like the way he was hyper and getting across the table and everything. And I also want to mention that like they really established that Wayne Gale is like a megalomaniac and an asshole like the whole time. Like,
oh gosh,
a narcissist very well. And like, just there's even a scene where he's like, trimming his nose hair in the jail bathroom, and there's like one of the patrons is cleaning up, and he, is trying to make a rapport with the patron, I guess. And patron's not the right word, with the inmate. And the guy's like, "What you in for?" The guy's like, "Murder." He's like, "Yeah, that's a bad one." He gives
yeah.
You could just tell that there's nothing really connecting in there. And like, even when he's doing this interview with Mickey, like, and he's, trying to get him act, crazy at him and try to get him to like reacting to him. And when like the outbursts happen and when it's over, he like ends it and like goes up and like hugs Woody Harrelson. Like, it's just not paying attention to what's really happening. Like, you can tell he doesn't really understand that this man is a fucking killer. And that
he's so removed from it.
Like nothing can happen.
Literally views it as entertainment himself.
Yeah, it's ratings. That's all it is.
And I also think it's also privilege and entitlement. Like, I don't think he thinks that he could ever be a victim because he's rich and he has influential friends.
Right.
Is the other thing. Like, to him, it's not real that he could be killed by, Mickey or Mallory.
Right. That's for poor people.
which essentially,
who,
I would say essentially that is his demise. It's his vanity and his, arrogance. That's what kills him.
Right. Because imagine how quickly this would have been a different movie if he gets crazy, and then he gets the upper hand, and right at the end he shoots both of them before they leave. Just kills both of them in the back of the head or something.
Oh yeah,
Like,
then
to
he's a
me,
hero.
then he becomes a hero, and then he becomes the story, right?
Right.
That's kind of how I would have wrote it, because
Well, you know, and
it
that's
seems,
and
yeah,
interesting. I like that, Randy. But also, you know, the same note, like so you point out that he becomes a mass murderer too. Yeah, he takes a gun at some point when they're in Tonga riots and shoots at the guards and other people,
yeah,
and would continue doing it, except for Mickey takes the gun away from him, sticks the camera in his hand instead. And I think
yeah,
he even says something along the lines of, "You can't be trusted."
Yeah,
But
shoot
here's
with
the funny
this.
thing, like
yeah,
you also know that the character Wayne Gale didn't think he would ever be accountable for it either. Like at
right.
no point did he think he would be brought to the carpet or charges pressed on him for murdering it, you know, because people, you know, I know Bill Clinton, you know, whatever. I know
Right.
this person. I know that person. They're
He
going
would
to
have
get
fought
accountable.
it as, I was trying to fight my way out. I was in a situation, and
Like,
I can
yeah,
just
no
imagine that
accountability.
court case. Yeah, would have been crazy. But yeah, this leads to, like I said, one of the most visually crazy parts of the movie, because there's toilet paper on fire, people getting stabbed and murdered left and right. Mickey and Mallory are getting attacked, and then this benevolent inmate comes out of nowhere, and he's kind of like their shepherd and guides them through the rest of the maze. He's real calm dude. Like,
You
he
know,
might have even been more terrifying than they
Well,
were.
fun fact about the crazy guy, he was supposed to be kind of a oh my gosh, cannibal.
a
Oh
cannibal.
wow.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I
Um,
thought maybe it was supposed to be a throwback to the old Bonnie and Clyde movie, the one with Warren Beatty, where like
no,
he
no,
had this
no.
character in it that was just this real soft-spoken guy that just
No,
went
no,
along
no.
on the killing
That
spree
was the
at the end.
whole point, that he was
Yeah.
going to be a cannibal, because if you see the alternate ending, he stays alive with them and he's in the car and he ends up killing Mickey and Mallory only to eat them,
Oh wow.
That also would have been a wonderful.
Yeah, I
which is so
totally would have.
fucked up. But I understand why they took it out, because it makes no sense. You just threw in this new character and
Right.
then what?
Well, it makes as much sense as anything else. If you go back to the, you know, the shaman saying, "You knew I was a snake," which is also again Wayne Gale's demise.
That's
Right.
true.
You know, there's another convict in a, you know, prison that's basically, you know, violent offenders and murderers. They say that repeatedly, well, at least once, very clearly when they're walking them through. So, you know, it's not like Mickey and Mallory would think that they would be exempt from being killed by another killer, right?
Right.
Unless they weren't paying attention, they just allied themselves with somebody that they thought was harmless.
I think they feel like they're the lions,
Mm-hmm.
and
Their own
everyone else is
arrogance.
just the prey. Yeah, so their own arrogance would get them too. Which, I mean, I'd like to talk about. We'll get to that at the very end, because I want to. There's that leads me to something. But let's talk about too the riot with Tommy Lee Jones.
Okay.
Yeah, John Paul, take it away.
I
This
mean,
guy.
I love
Yeah,
Tommy Lee Jones. I mean,
yeah,
and how crazy is this, warden trying to keep order during this riot when he's getting reports of all these things. I mean, one of my favorite scenes is that they grab that stack of papers and they're like, "What is this?" He's like, "All the inmates that are missing." I don't fucking need this. And they,
No, it wasn't even the
yeah.
inmates that were missing. It was all the inmates that were in the prison. He was
the
like,
prison, right? He's like,
Right.
I,
Right.
you know,
I guess I never understood, though, as a war. I guess it's his vanity that gets him killed too, or his hubris, because he thinks he can control it like God.
yeah,
Well, I would have been scooping up the people that were left and getting them the fuck out of there.
well, you know, I think it was that and his hyper focus on Mickey and Mallory.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of point out like this scene. There's another scene where a guard comes in and he's telling like, you know, the extra shit that's going on. And I forgot the first thing he says was, but you know, the warden's like, "No shit." And the second one was Mickey and Mallory got out. You see this look on his face where it's like sheer, like, fuck. Then he's like, "Oh, and so and Scagnetti's dead." And he's like, "Who cares?" You know, like the whole thing that he focuses in on is Mickey and Mallory being free.
And that makes
this
sense, because
price
he
on the
does say,
crunch.
yeah, he does say that if we kill them, it'll all stop.
Yeah.
Remember?
And
He
that's
thinks that. Yeah.
it does end up being his demise, because when he's like there and I think one of the guards or a couple of the guards say something about him that he should be focused on getting control and shutting down this, and he's like,
Yeah.
"No, if I get these two, then that's it, this kills it all." And he stays focused on him, and that's how he ends up being locked in his own prison and murdered by the rest of it.
Yeah, and I have the director's cut, so I got to see his head on a spike.
You get to see the head on the spike. Yeah.
I did not get to see the head on the spike.
Yeah, they really that's one of the scenes that got cut because they knew it was going to be too controversial. It came out in the director's cut later, but it shows him getting pulled down, and then the next scene is they've got his head on a spike and they're like running around with it, and it looks just like Tommy Lee Jones. It's really gross. They did a good job on it.
I meant to go back. I forgot. So like we kind of talked a little bit about the Scagnetti and Mallory scene where he's trying to.
Oh, yeah.
I would say force her to have sex with him because that's basically what it is. And like I just want to point out like all the red flags that he should have seen that meant that this was not going to happen the way he expected it. Like, you know, he gives her a cigarette. She puts it out with her foot and doesn't even flinch, like her bare foot. You know? Right. He kept, you know, the day before when or not the day before, the time before he visited, they show a scene where she sings Born Bad and then like slams her head into the, like runs full bore at the door and knocks herself out. Like there's all this stuff. And then of course, when he thinks he's going to get what he wants, she turns the table, beats the shit out of him. And a part of that scene, she slams Scagnetti into a wall. Juliette Lewis actually broke Tom Sizemore's nose.
Oh, nice. Shit.
It's not funny, but it kind of is.
The bitch broke my
nose. I kind of feel like she was probably in the moment dealing with like all this disgusting thing as an actress, and she just kind of went full force with it. And I don't think Tom Sizemore was prepared for it.
Doesn't sound like it. Yeah. That you're right though. That Mickey comes to get her, but she's already got the upper hand by that point. She's hiding. Well, kind of. I guess
she lost it because eventually the bumbling guards get in and they start beating the shit out of her, and they ended up. You know, Scagnetti just goes nuts because of course he's pissed that this little girl just beat the shit out of him when he thought he was going to get his rocks off, and sees spraying mace in her face, and
that's right. Yeah.
Right when Mickey comes in,
but she gets him.
Actually, to your point, there's like that standoff, and Mickey sees Mallory coming to, and he actually sets it up so she could take care of him, and I liked that part too, where he was like, "No, my woman got you. I'm going to let her go."
Yeah. He was just waiting for her. He had to pounce. That was fantastic. But yeah, that whole scene, you're right. That whole thing is crazy too. But it goes back to our original discussion on it too, is that she was the cat the whole time, you know.
Oh, yeah.
He's so dumb and arrogant himself. These are all, like you said, irredeemable main characters. They're just fucking terrible.
Well,
They're all
tells her that he killed a person once.
Yeah.
Going back to the hooker that he killed.
Yeah.
You know, and it's almost like he's like, see, I'm kind of Mickey too. Like, it's not even like he's trying to intimidate her with that knowledge. He's trying to, I don't know,
impress her
with it.
Yeah. He's trying to impress her. Yeah, exactly right. So, but yeah, that part's crazy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just. Yeah.
No. And then, then we get back to the warden's dead, the prison's in chaos. Our heroes, if you call them that, get out. Mm-hmm. And
they actually don't explain. So like the cannibal, I guess you assume he got killed on the way.
Right.
Yeah, Wayne Gale does explain what happened to the other guard. But...
Right. Well, they are trapped in the bathroom too. I don't want to skip that part because that's what the Wayne Gale phone call. Wayne Gale calls up his wife and tells her he wants a divorce. He's like, I'm alive for the first fucking time in my life. And then he immediately calls his girlfriend and tells her that he's leaving his wife and going to get the chili peppers out. Yeah. And she's like, no, you're a fucking psycho. Don't come here. You know, like, and basically breaks up with him, which is hilarious too. So that whole part's really funny.
Well, you know, yeah. It actually ties back to like before that, when they're setting up to, you know, the promos and stuff for the live interview that's to come, where his wife had found Ming's number. That's the girlfriend's name.
Yeah,
Ming Dynasty.
He tells her that Ming is not a person, Ming is a restaurant. And then he is on the phone with the girlfriend, and the girlfriend's like, she knows. And he's like, no, she doesn't know. Just if she calls again, say Ming Dynasty.
Ming Dynasty.
Order.
Yeah.
There's just so much like, and then, like, so much just goes.
He's just awful in the best way possible though for this movie, because it all works out.
Well, and along there was the implication that, you know, he's only got the position of power and the money and this gig because he'd been with his wife and got her knocked up and ended up marrying her as a result. And like there's a scene earlier where he's on the phone with the his father-in-law is telling him that, we need to do this and we are going to do the Super Bowl day where I'm leaving and I'll take all my money and media with me.
Right.
So like just a dick.
Yeah, he's a trash person.
Sorry, I guess we can't beat that point more enough, but yeah.
No. But so then you're right, we get outside and the prison's in chaos and we pick back up with everybody's in the woods. And by everybody, I mean, we've lost the cannibal guy, but it's Mickey Mallory and Wayne Gale, who thinks he's going to make it out of this thing and go on to write books and movies.
Why helicopters were not deployed.
I don't know why, but for some reason that
line is brilliant.
And Woody Harrelson following up with it. That is why helicopters were not deployed. Like,
yeah,
it always stopping to giggles.
Love that line in this movie because it makes me laugh so hard.
And the way
because I'm like, you're gonna fucking die. I'm like, he's fucking dead right away. As soon as he said that, I'm like, he's fucking dead. They're killing him.
Yeah, he gets shot. They murder him straight up. They video it because that's why they've got the video camera, so that they don't need him. So
yeah, it's two things set up there. I mean, like one, the video camera from the pharmacy or the drugstore, and two, you knew I was a snake when you picked me up. So
that's right.
It's another thing because there's this whole monologue too, where like Wayne Gale's sitting there saying that I left my wife, my girlfriend left me, helicopters were not deployed. He sounds a little bit compassionate when he talks about the prison guard being shot and thrown out. But yeah, you could tell he's not getting that he's next on the list at all.
No, not at all.
And like when Mickey tells him, like, look, you're a piece of shit. Like, you're the worst of the worst. We did not develop a rapport or camaraderie. I mean, though he does say he did kind of like him, but he just seems like, yeah, you're still gonna die.
Yeah, after he shot him, he said something like I was starting to kind of like him.
Narcissist.
Right. But it brings me to the end, and I gotta know your guys' thoughts because to this day, I'm never sure if that ending is actually true. Where they're writing in I think it's like a
Winnebago.
I think it's their version of what they thought was going to happen after, from their point of view. But there's no way they were living in a Winnebago and had a family and were living like it was 1987.
I never was sure, like, because they mentioned an underground, where they supposedly would be able to come out clean somewhere, and who knows, they could have been running around in the RV in Mexico.
I just think that they were too famous.
But I kind of thought the point of it was just, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong. This was totally me reading into it. Like I have no insight, but it kind of, to me, was making a commentary on generational violence and trauma. I mean, like, so here, even in their interview where Mickey says, I came from violence, my dad came from violence, and then the next thing they're riding off in and I'm sorry, not an SUV, an RV with two kids and another on the way. Like, what is the expectation? Like, if you never fixed your generational trauma, guess what's going to happen to those kids, and I didn't know if maybe that was the implied point that was supposed to come on, that here again, we're going to be raising some more killers,
I really like that. That's a really good idea. Like, we were seeing a glimpse at future serial killers or future mass murderers, so. I'm
going to go stick to my whole thing, and it's Looney Tunes. It's a that's all, folks.
Oh,
happy ending. I mean, and that's what's really kind of, it goes back to my point of it's kind of ridiculous farce, because this movie should not end with the killers getting a happy ending. They should have died.
Well, I think that was part of the controversy too when it came out, right? Was how it all wrapped itself up with that they got away,
right.
Like, but I like I said, I always imagined, I like Jenny's version better, but
I do too. I like that perspective
as their point of view, like they're like going to ride off in the sunset, and that's probably not what happened. They probably got murdered 5 miles down the road by a gang of cops, but
yeah,
that's just me.
So I mean, to be fair, it's the 90s, so like not every car was, you couldn't track it like you can nowadays. Nobody had cell phones, so
that is true. You could disappear. I mean, look at the Unabomber, right? I mean, Ted Kaczynski lived in the woods successfully for almost a decade before they got him. So, and he was still blowing people up. It wasn't like he had stopped. So you're right. There are in that time period, we didn't have the technology we have now. So yeah, it was still pretty easy to disappear, you
Mhm.
know, harder than it was in the 50s or in the 50s, but still plausible
Yeah.
for the 90s.
I
You know,
mean,
so
that social media didn't really exist, so you had TV media, but you wouldn't be seeing like their faces all over Facebook or Twitter or anything.
Right.
I mean, the internet wasn't a thing really so much then. It
Well, like
existed. It was not mainstream or wide. You had blogs.
even you could have national news, right?
Mhm.
Like ABC or what NBC, right? But in Alaska, their national news is going to be different than ours, you know. I mean, it's still national news, but everybody's getting the same thing, but they're not going to have the same channels or opportunities to watch. So who knows what was covering what? Maybe they didn't even have Wayne Gale where they were headed, you know. So Canada, let's say, right?
So yeah,
But
I mean, I guess the more we talk about, the more I'm like, I guess it could be possible that that did
right, it
fly
could be.
off
It
into the
just seems
sunset.
really it seems really out of character unless you're going with John Paul's did it.
I mean, yeah. But before we wrap this up, there's one point in this movie that we didn't bring up, and I do want to bring it up because, in my opinion, it's one of the best points that goes hand in hand with this movie, and that's the soundtrack. The
Oh, one of my
soundtrack
all-time
to this
favorites.
movie
Yeah,
is so fucking phenomenal, and it was
yeah,
produced by Oliver Stone and Trent Reznor.
As I was saying,
yeah.
yeah.
Let me
I
tell you,
mean,
man, Burn. Oh, was on. I mean, this
yeah,
soundtrack is phenomenal.
It is.
Yeah,
yeah. The way it's
You got Rage Against the
integrated,
Machine in there. It's just great.
yeah.
yeah,
I love how it was integrated with what the visuals you get with the soundtrack and music. And if you get this album, I like that they purposely put dialogue of the movie with the songs. So it was just such like a MTV generation type, you know. I don't know, it was just so good. And
So actually, a note.
right.
So I read that Trent Reznor watched this movie 50 times to be in the right mood to mix the soundtrack.
that's
I don't
awesome.
know how you could do that. I've watched it like 5 times in my life, and
Well, I did
I
watch it
don't.
like 3 times over this last week. So,
Right, I was going to say 2 of those were in the last month. So
but
I mean,
yeah,
I again, I've watched this movie so much, but it's weird because I like it, but I like it because it's got so many different layers. And that's why I would recommend people to check this out. It is free on Tubi right now, so you can, watch it on Tubi. I'm not sure which version it is. I own, my version of it. And I know there's been a whole bunch of different versions. There's a director's cut. There's an unrated director's cut. There's all kinds of different cuts. There's a DVD underground cut. I mean, there's like all kinds of different cuts of this
right.
movie, but
I
it's
would bet
so damn good.
Tubi probably just has the theatrical version. I would bet.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but it's still
It's
great.
worth it. It's still
Yeah.
worth it. But like I said, the soundtrack is just so fucking powerful.
Well, to add to that, like, so there's movies where I've loved the soundtrack, but I thought the soundtrack did not fit in the movie well. But this case, I mean, I love the soundtrack standalone, and I think it is so integral to building this movie into what it is that
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. It's all around. It's a ground mark cinema experience for that time. It's a time capsule for sure, right? I mean, this movie, I think that people should. I bet film schools do study it. It had an impact in culture and a conversation, with people. It started a whole conversation about media. And I remember, you guys probably remember too, Oliver Stone hitting all the talk show circuit after it came out, like
Defending it, yeah.
and saying you guys are the problem. My movie isn't the problem.
That's right.
Or the issue.
Well, another interesting point. I think it was in Scotland. There was it the Monday? There was a school shooting. Like I think the week before that this was supposed to be released on TV in Scotland. I think it was Scotland. It's somewhere in the UK, and they were going to go ahead and do it. Like the government was, the public was, and actually the people behind the movie said, no, we're not putting this on TV when this just happened. Wow. So it actually got released to DVD before it ever showed on TV there.
Wow.
Interestingly enough. Or well, probably VHS at the time. Sorry. My bad.
And
Right.
I gotta to talk to the younger people. If any younger people watch this too, you just don't understand that time period. We had politicians who were going to bat and saying that this stuff should just be expunged from society. It, they weren't just saying to put harsher ratings. They were saying that creators should be able to create this stuff.
They
It
should be
was in
banned.
everything from video games to music. It's why when you buy an album, there's a warning, a
Parental
label on it.
advisory.
Yeah, exactly. Um, it was a weird time to exist in this where everybody thought they had the moral high ground to tell other people what to do and how to live.
Mhm.
And here we are now. I think we've made big strides in, but there's still
In
that
some
kind of,
regards, we have.
We're
In
kind
some
of
there's,
regards,
fighting
we've
the
gone
battle
backwards.
all over again.
yeah,
And when
Yes.
people talk about cancel culture, I'm like, you don't even know. You know what I mean?
right.
And but to the point of like when you think about the 90s, I'm like, we didn't even really know what cancel culture was when you think about McCarthyism. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so
Yeah, I
but you're
mean,
right. They were trying to Bob Dole was like, this should be banned. He never even watched the movie.
right. He
Bob
had
Dole
just
was a
seen a
senator,
trailer.
by the way, in case you
Yeah, Bob Dole. Everybody, and when he passed away, everybody was talking about what a great guy he was. I bet he was a nice man, but he did a lot of he was the backer of a lot of really shitty policies.
Yes.
So I mean, and they always do that. That you know, these politicians will pass away, and then they go, "Well, he was all right." No, sometimes they were fucking terrible at their jobs, you know, and they should be called out, just like you would single out anybody else
Mhm.
for doing a terrible job, you know. Like I
mean, it's just a long trend of like
yeah.
people's thinking that
Um,
their beliefs are the correct beliefs. They're the right and you are wrong.
Al Gore's wife is the reason that
Different board.
music was under fire.
That
You know,
is true.
I mean,
That is the reason why there is a label, because of Al Gore's
they
wife.
want to talk about how Al Gore's a nice man and brought attention to climate change, and you're like, yeah, he probably could have done something about it, seeing as how he was in office, and they spent 8 years working on getting music to have
Censorship.
labels on it. You know, I mean,
Which is also why I always got to give props to D. Snyder, because man, he stepped up and he was like,
uh,
no.
you
He was
kids
like,
watch Google, go to YouTube, put D. Snyder Congress, have your mind blown. A guy who they wanted to paint, they invited him because they thought he'd be a dipshit, and he's one of the smartest guys on the planet. It's beautiful.
it is,
He
yeah. He
melts
schooled them.
faces in that.
And he called out all the rest of the like rock and rollers and musicians. He's like, where the fuck were you? He like flat out was like, where were you?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing thing. And but so that's where this is for me. It's always whenever I watch it, I think back on that time and how crazy it was and how everybody was so wired about the violence in this, which now it just plays as cartoonish, as John Paul points
Well,
out.
and that's what I say. You know, I watched this with my wife, and to her,
It's my wife.
this does not hold up. She said she doesn't feel like this movie holds up now.
She doesn't have a frame of reference for whether or not it holds up. She wasn't around when it was there.
Well,
originally.
because now, well, no, that's the thing.
Well-
The violence in this movie now
Yeah.
is nothing like violence in movies now.
Oh, that's
Well,
what
and
yeah,
in reality too, because you know,
Yeah.
it's like so it's
Exactly.
not like there wasn't mass murders and shootings and stuff like that prior to this, but then Columbine happened after that.
Exactly.
Sandy Hook, you know, 9/11 happened after that. There's, you know, I mean, a culture inundated with gun violence for sure. So now
Exactly.
this stuff just looks laughable.
Right.
Right. Well,
Or
compare
you're numb
this-
to it.
Yeah, compare this like the stuff in this to a show like Manhunter on Netflix, right? That deals with subject matter very similar to this, right? Chasing mass murderers, serial killers. The graphicness in that is tenfold.
Oh yeah,
with this because
100%.
it's more realistic. It's grounded. We want it. We want things to be more real now. You know. So it's like watching Law and Order SVU. When I was a kid, they used to be goofy stuff that you're just like, oh, or they pull something from a headline. Now it's like super freaking graphic. You know, you're just like, wow, this. They were complaining about this a decade ago, and now it's even worse. You know.
Yeah.
So, but I don't care. I don't want it to be censored.
No.
I think
No, I
that
don't either. I
this
don't
stuff
either.
should be out there so that we can have people
Sorry,
that are
dog.
smart enough to have warnings, you know, and smart commentary on things. I want to say one more thing to Jenny. She mentioned this, and I wasn't going to bring up anything about this, but she mentioned it earlier. And so she talked about how Juliette Lewis has a part where she puts the cigarette out with her foot. I guess Oliver Stone can do it and it's cool, but when Quentin Tarantino does it, oh.
Well, okay. To be fair, I don't give a shit about foot fetishes at
Okay.
all. My issue with Quentin Tarantino is not foot fetishes. But I forgot this, but there's like one of the earlier scenes where they like are starting out on their spree and they're in the
Yeah.
convertible and she has her foot up on the dash and on the windshield. And I'm like, oh, that's totally Quentin Tarantino. He probably wrote that.
That's his scene where he salivates.
Yeah.
And on that note, kiddies.
Oh, wait, no. There's a couple. So
Oh, one
things that
more.
we
Okay.
should probably point out. So this movie was shot in 56 days.
That's
for
right.
photography. Took 11 months to edit.
Wow.
So a couple things to know, because of the 56 days, you see a lot of continuity issues come up. So if you want to like have a fun drinking game, just, you know, watch it and look for like weird things that like, hey, wait, he shaved his head. Why does he have hair in that scene? You know, like there's stuff
Yeah.
like that. The 11 months editing, if you think about it, I think, so the negative cutter for this movie cut in 4,000 scene or 4,000 stills, or not stills, 4,000 cuts into it with like, you know, where you see all those flashes with different movies and stuff like that. And it was like one of the biggest projects a negative cutter ever did. Like,
I can imagine.
much.
I can't believe, but it's Oliver Stone, but 56 days that there was that much footage to have 4 or 5 different versions of this movie too. But that's what he does. He just
and I think that's some of the stuff they cut in. I wish
Yeah.
I could. I think I wrote down the negative cutter's name. It was Donna something. Chance almost 3,000 cuts. The negative cutter's name was Donna Bassett, and she cut 4,000 negative images into the film.
Wow.
and this is
So
before
a lot of
computers.
maybe the reason why there's so many different versions has more to do
Yeah.
with that than the 56.
Probably.
That's all hand done, man. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So,
It also context kids. This is not digital.
no, they're taking actual film squares and slicing them and adhering them together in boxes. It is that painstaking process.
So yeah, props to that woman. Why I
That's
say
it.
it was a woman, it might be a man. Props to that person. That negative cutter should be
Yeah.
have a legendary plaque somewhere for themselves for that.
Hopefully.
Also, so to pick on Randy, so like I said, Ken Tarantino, he hated this movie. He wanted nothing to do with it once it came out. He didn't want his name associated with it until he ran into Johnny and June Carter Cash, and they told him that they really loved this movie. It was one of their favorites. And then he kind of was like, oh no, yeah. Kind of had something to do with that.
Yeah, I've read many a different explanations for why he had a change of heart, because I do remember he was pissed off, like you said. Yeah, money is probably a factor, but the more famous he got, the more he probably didn't want to piss off Oliver Stone and other people, you know, that he wanted to work with down the road. So he probably let off of it. But yeah, I remember reading an article that he hated this movie for a while. But
I mean, to be fair to him, though, like as I mentioned, like his original screenplay versus this movie are supposed to be completely like not the same animal at all, almost like
Right.
unrecognizable aside from character names in it. And you know, I mean, this was going to be the first movie that Quentin Tarantino was going to direct with a friend of his, I think.
yeah,
It was
Roger
going to be
Avary.
his first movie.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he had a little special place in his heart for what he wanted to see. And then when it got completely changed around, I could see where he'd be like, fuck you people. I don't want anything to do with this. This is not my movie. So
And that happened to him twice, you know, because True Romance was another one that he wrote. And I don't think he
he didn't
hated
hate that
one.
one though.
He didn't.
But yeah, but I'm just saying, like, he wanted to make it. He had the idea for how he wanted to shoot it, and he had to sell the script to finance other projects that he was involved with. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, that's always, I always wonder what these two movies would have looked like had he done them.
Well,
know?
they did publish his screenplay, so you know,
I'm gonna have to
as a
find
book.
it. Yeah,
So at some point,
I
I'm
would-
gonna have to read it to see what his version of this was, because now
yeah,
this is according to Oliver Stone, which, I mean, Coke and all. He basically said in '94 that Tarantino's version was basically all about the media character, and that the Mickey and Mallory were like background characters of the story that the media person was telling, and the focus was on the media character. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Like I said, Stone.
that sounds like an
Stoned a lot.
interesting movie.
So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also originally Oliver Stone wanted to make this a simple action movie, and he said that it just, as he was doing, it just wasn't going to be. He wanted something more layered, more complex, and he couldn't just make it a simple action. So
All right. Well, on that note, let's do final quick thoughts.
Okay.
So, Randy, what's your final thoughts on this movie?
My final thought would be that I think it's an important movie, and everybody should at least watch it once, regardless of your threshold for violence. It has a lot of important things to say. It's entertaining. It has an amazing soundtrack, and the cast is phenomenal. You'll never see another movie like this, probably. It's its own animal. So I say check it out.
All right, and I guess Jenny, go for it.
I agree. You need to watch it at least once. Try to do something to be able to get past Juliette Lewis's voice in that. And maybe it doesn't strike everybody the way it does me, but focus on the phenomenal acting, what they did with the editing, just the satire, what the warning is supposed to be, and just be kind of awed by it, really, because it was way ahead of its time in a lot of ways, even though like to Kate's point, it maybe does not hold up violence wise, but what it did. And I think a lot of movies kind of copied some of the innovations from it, the way things were cut in. And so, yeah, watch it. It should be a piece of cinema history that gets studied for sure.
Absolutely.
So, Jenny, you read a lot of my mind. Yeah, I think, yes, the way this movie's shot, a lot of movies started copying a lot of the same styles. So definitely innovative. I mean, I even think Tarantino kind of used some of the style in this movie as well. But I recommend to watch it, even though like I said, it's Looney Tunes, but it's fun Looney Tunes. And maybe it's just my warped sense of mind and warped sense of humor. Because I do laugh when I watch this movie, because I guess I'm crazy. But, and the soundtrack, I can't say. I mean, after rewatching this, I have just been playing the soundtrack nonstop, and I love it so much. It's just so good, because it goes from like rap, rock, 50s classic. I mean, and you wouldn't think this stuff would like mesh together, but it does, and it's so brilliant. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's free on Tubi, so give it a whirl.
And after you watch it, you will say, "What the fuck did I just watch?"
That's right. So,
thanks.
Thank you. It's John Paul here, and we're gonna say goodbye.
Bye, guys.
And bye, Randy. Thanks for coming.
As always, thank you.
Welcome to our new year. We have fun special movies ahead. And if you ever want to join our fun panel, we'll welcome you to. We have what?
If you want to be a guest, reach out, tell us what you want to watch, or just tell us you don't care what you want to watch and you just want to be on the podcast, and we'll hook it up. Randy, are you still doing Midnight Nexus?
Probably not at the moment. It's on hiatus. We're doing a book right now. We took all of the short stories from Midnight Nexus, the podcast, which you can find on
Zombie Takeover TV on Bandcamp.
Zombie Takeover TV and Bandcamp. Thank you, Jenny. Was like a collection of short stories from different authors. Me and one of the other primary authors, Jake Thornburg, have put our stories together in a compilation and added some new material. And we just finished the final draft. We're working on the actual content of the book, the context, so the exterior of the book itself and how it'll look, and getting all that together. It'll be published in February. So
that's awesome.
We will be putting that up on Amazon.com. Get your copy.
Keep an eye out for that. Also, you can catch me on Girls Go Schools. And John Paul may be having a reboot surprise coming up in the future. So
maybe a reboot is coming. Yeah, all the Fangled kids like reboots, and there might be a reboot in my future. So more to come soon.
All right.
More to come. But again, I'm Jean Paul Mantilla, and for What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? I have my wonderful co-host Jenny and our wonderful guest Randy. Hey, thanks all, and have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Good night.
You have been listening to
What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube at WTF Did I Just Watch? Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us again soon.